Welcome to another episode of AutoMundial's weekly car news and review show, where this week we're taking a look at a pair of new concept cars from Infiniti.
And we have the thunderous V8 of the Jaguar FPace SVR, as well as some two-wheeled action from India.
Plus we have a modern interpretation of the classic Morris J-type van.
All that is still to come. First though,
as the automotive industry and the worldwide community as a whole begins to secure a grip on the coronavirus, more and more manufacturers are beginning to restart production, with the VW the latest to reopen its doors. Numerous Volkswagen plants in more than 10 countries worldwide have allowed workers to return to their jobs under a carefully fashioned 100-point plan for maximum health protection. With branches in Germany and Slovakia the first to open in Europe, in China 32 of the 33 VW factories have now reopened, with no reported cases among the employees. This resumption is expected to motivate the car industry once again, which has taken an unprecedented economic blow as a result of the pandemic. In the weeks that follow, and as restrictions are expected to ease, we may begin to see other manufacturers following in the steps of Europe's biggest car maker.
Also in the news, historic British brand Morris has been reborn with an all-new retro electric van. It may appear to have come straight from the set of a 1940s period drama, but the JE is brand new, although more than a few styling cues have been taken from the old post-war J-type. The fully electric van has a range of up to 200 miles thanks to its carbon fibre construction, helping to keep the weight down. For easy loading, it has opening doors at the back and a sliding door on the side which opens on the left, handy for opening onto the pavement in right-hand drive markets. Morris Commercial says the JE can carry up to a tonne in the back and can fit 2 standard European pallets. There are also plans for a pickup version and possibly even a camper van or minibus. With its batteries and carbon fibre bodywork, it's likely the JE will cost a bit more than your everyday Ford Transit. But the Morris will certainly appeal to those looking to stand out from the delivery van crowd.
during the current lockdown period, we've been taking a look back through the archive at some of our favourite concept cars of recent years. We've seen everything from the weird to the wonderful, but this week we're looking at something that is perhaps a little closer to making it to production. Electric performance cars are coming, in particular luxury saloons. Not as a fast torrent, but more an intermittent drip. And now Infiniti, Nissan's luxury sub-brand, wants in with its latest electric concept car, the QS Inspiration. A vision for future models, it promises high performance and all-wheel power to kickstart Infiniti's electric lineup. Unveiled in Shanghai, the QS previews the bones of a future production model and a new architecture for future lines. Aimed to first hit the Chinese market, can the QS tread in the footsteps of Tesla and bring luxury, performance and tons of tech in one package? Luxury EVs have to tick a lot of boxes to win over fans. Eco-credentials are a given, an interior like a present-day Knight Rider, and performance to rival the best. They also have to have a futuristic look without looking too out of place. A fine balancing act, with the QS seemingly covering most of these bases. Designed and built in China, the first hurdle will be to appeal to this local market. The company says the QS will help Infiniti reinvent itself as a mark. And that can only be a good thing, as Infiniti has had a pretty torrid time over the past few years, particularly in Europe, where almost non-existent sales have forced many of its dealerships to close. Moving inside, the Infiniti's interior is described as minimalist and human-centric. That usually translates as one huge screen for all the controls and some light-coloured upholstery. The interior looks like a spaceship, with production models likely to have a slightly more traditional layout. Either way, the Jaguar I-Pace and Porsche Taycan are the benchmarks in this class, so it'll need to remain premium. The ProPilot technologies are said to liberate the driver from mundane and stressful drives. In other words, an autonomous driving mode to take over when you fancy a flick through the newspaper in traffic. A new platform hopes to increase the space from the traditional three-box saloon design and give a spacious, lounge-like interior. The elevated driving position also speaks more of a small SUV influence. Not surprising, as this is the current fashion and reminiscent of the Jaguar I-Pace.
But this isn't the only new Infiniti concept car with big production plans. This is the bigger QX, and as SUVs go, this one is definitely a looker. As with the aforementioned Jaguar, the lack of internal combustion engine up front has allowed the designers to play with the way a car should look. The cabin has been brought forwards, maximising interior space. Looking inside the cockpit though, this is clearly a long way from production ready. Like the smaller QS, it has some vibrant screens and a weird steering wheel, with the overall ambience of a modern high-end hotel. With the batteries sitting underneath the car and no pesky prop shaft to worry about, the QX has a completely flat floor. This helps to emphasise the airy atmosphere, as do the bronze accents and the all-important flower vase. Both of these cars, the QS and the QX, demonstrate a much-needed rethink to the way Infiniti designs and builds its cars. Many of its current production models are dated and fairly bland. But these two new concepts look to push the Japanese brand in a new direction, separating it more from the parent company Nissan. We can't say for sure if, or indeed when, these cars will enter production, but it's likely we'll see plenty of their influences in coming models.
And now some fun on two wheels with the new Indian FTR.
Now, Chris tests the new flat-track-inspired Indian FTR 1200S. He's taking it from the road back to the dirt.
This FTR 1200, it was based on Indian's FTR 750 flat-track race bike. That was a bit of a milestone bike in itself. This FTR 1200 is trying to sort of take styling cues and draw off the experience of that 750, which always sounds like a very non-committal thing from a manufacturer. It usually means they want you to think it's the race bike, and it's nothing like it. Actually, with this thing, it feels really good. It feels like it could be a race bike. Clearly the engine's different, clearly the chassis is different, but the way it rides, the way it responds every time you hit the gas, it feels like it is a race bike. It's so much fun. This thing is incredible. It has put such a smile on my face. Everything I thought I knew about the American V-twins, I had to forget. You know, I was expecting lazy, low revving, cruisy bike with no real urgency to the throttle. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not super exciting. This engine is nothing like that. It is one of the most responsive and one of the most instant power deliveries of a bike I think I've ever ridden. But it does it in a way that's usable and predictable. It's not a peaky bike that suddenly spins up and snaps out your hands. It's a bike that the minute you crack the gas, it wants to go, and if there's not grip, it goes sideways. The styling is cool, the riding position is comfortable. You can cruise it. You can sit there, low revs, doff your way along, in a check shirt and jeans, and it's the perfect bike for the job. But then when your crazy switch goes, you can ping the clutch and drift and slide it and smoke the tyres everywhere, and it doesn't get grumpy or bored. It loves it. I spent a lot of time today questioning why this thing is so easy and fun to slide. Clearly it's a little bit what they've learned from the flat track bike, the race bike, but I think what makes it so good is wide bars, long, low, and that engine. And that combination with the low, long chassis and that punchy engine, instead of it wanting to wheelie or sit up, it just wants to slide. And that makes it really predictable, turns you into an idiot in a different way. Supermotos want to wheelie, this thing wants to drift. Spec-wise, this one is the FTR 1200S, which is 12.8. The base model's 11.8. This one's got fully adjustable forks, fully adjustable shock, Sachs shock, a ZF fork, Brembo brakes, Brembo master cylinder, snazzy Pro Taper bars, and actually quite a trick touchscreen LCD display. That's a really nice touch, and it works. A big win there, and it just makes navigating the menus that little bit easier. You get traction control, rider modes. The traction control's proper lean sensitive traction control as well. It's a high quality unit. And you get the 3 selectable rider modes, and you get a track mode, which is where you can turn the ABS off and the traction control off and go crazy. What we're interested in is hitting these bikes on the trails, on the small roads, and enjoying them. This thing is designed to put smiles on faces, and it does that really well.
After the break, the new Audi S6 and a V8 Jag.
Still to come, the FPace SVR. But first,
We love a fast Audi here at AutoMundial, and while the all-new fire-breathing RS6 has left our mouths agape, it's the new S6 that's really caught our attention. Because while it does without the carbon fibre add-ons and bulbous wheel arches, the new S6 has one of the most interesting engines we've seen in a mainstream performance car for a long time. Gone is the evocative V8 of the old car, and in its place sits a V6 TDI. Yep, Audi's greatest Q car has gone diesel. So, is this a game changer, or has Audi completely lost the plot? Well, it's not quite as quick as the old car. The 0 to 62 time has increased by nearly a second to 5.1 seconds for the Avant, while power is way down at 349 brake horsepower. It does have more torque, but it only lasts for 600 RPM. And while it's definitely not slow, this is now a very expensive performance saloon or estate that will struggle to keep up with many modern hot hatchbacks. So what's Audi thinking behind this new, slower S6? Well, it comes down to two things, first of which is emissions. The old V8 car pumped out a lot of carbon dioxide, but this new 3-litre car is much greener. Audi needed to cut down its average CO2 figure, so the low-volume, high-pollution S6 was an obvious martyr. Secondly, Audi wanted to boost sales of the more expensive RS6. The old S and RS cars shared the same engine with different tunes, so expecting customers to pay a huge premium for the Halo car was becoming harder. But putting a diesel V6 in the S car immediately makes the petrol V8 in the RS6 seem so much more special.
So now we've got all of that out of the way, what is the new S6 actually like to drive? Well, the first thing you notice is the noise. It isn't a loud car. The S6 has always been a serious under-the-radar mile muncher for those who prefer to go unnoticed. But this new one has artificial engine noise pumped in through the speakers. Not only is this completely uncharacteristic of an S6, but it isn't an especially nice sound. Put your foot down and you're interrupted by some sort of boxer engine growl that, if we're honest, is a bit off-putting. Thankfully though, it can be turned off, and then the S6 really begins to shine. As with many fast Audis, it feels noise heavy, but the sheer amount of torque on offer means overtaking and powering out of junctions becomes seriously addictive. Plant your right foot and all of a sudden you're very far away from where you were, as the 8-speed automatic gearbox does a superb job of keeping you in the boost zone. That said, it's not as entertaining as the old petrol motor. It's ghostly quiet though, and extremely good at covering great distances in comfort.
As with the rest of the current A6 range, the interior is a wonderful environment in which to travel. There's a real sense of calm inside the S6. The lines are all clean and minimalist, with much of the design borrowed from the A8 limo. The dashboard is dominated by a fabulous pair of central screens, one for the infotainment and one for the climate controls. There's a third screen too, the virtual cockpit, which replaces traditional dials with route guidance and digital readouts. The materials on show are great too. Everything you touch feels expensive, and it makes you feel more special than an equivalent BMW. So, is the new S6 a disappointment? Well, from an enthusiast perspective, yes. The old V8 was the life and soul of the old car, with great performance and a terrific noise. The new diesel just can't deliver the same excitement. However, this is still a hugely impressive car. The way it builds and holds on to its pace is admirable, and we love that it still doesn't shout about its status. It's as subtle as ever, and with diesel power plant and 48-volt mild hybrid system, it's much more economical too. If anything though, it makes us want the new RS6 even more.
We've waited a long time for this, a really long time. First shown to us at the New York Auto Show way back in 2017, the Jaguar FPace SVR has finally made it to production. Jaguar has blamed quality issues for the delay, but anyway, now it's here. So has Jaguar missed the boat, or is the newest performance SUV worth the wait? The FPace SVR uses JLR's perennial 5-litre supercharged V8 that we've previously found in everything from F-Types to Range Rovers. However, the engine has been slightly detuned down to 542 brake horsepower, but the SVR is still good for 0 to 62 in 4.3 seconds. Not the quickest in class, but nonetheless impressive for a big SUV. Unsurprisingly, the Jag sounds awesome. The roar of that V8 is trumpeted through the quad exhaust protruding from the bespoke rear bumper. The SVR gets a much sportier look than the regular car, with a louvered bonnet, subtle rear spoiler and a lower, wider body kit. The whole car looks muscular without the garish trim and add-ons that you'll find on the Range Rover Sport SVR. The interior gets an upgrade too, with lashings of carbon fibre and some race-inspired bucket seats. It's clearly a high-quality product, but is it good enough to justify its £72,000 price tag? Well, it needs to beat this, our current class favourite, the powerhouse Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio.
Like the Jag, the Stelvio is definitely a looker. It builds on the standard car with wider wheels and a lower, more aggressive stance. Using much of the chassis from the Giulia Quadrifoglio saloon and the same twin-turbo V6, the Stelvio puts out 503 brake horsepower, exactly the same as the smaller Alfa. It's down on power versus the F-Pace, but thanks to its lower weight, it beats the Jag to 62 in just 3.8 seconds. Both cars have exactly the same 176 miles per hour top speed, so there's a little to split them on paper. So how do they compare to drive? Well, twist the Alfa's DNA dial to dynamic and the whole car feels immediately alive. It feels every bit as lively and energetic as the Giulia, with rapid acceleration and incredible grip. The exhaust makes some satisfying crackles on upshifts, and you'll have to really push it to notice the car's bulk. Obviously, being a high-riding SUV, it has a pretty high centre of gravity, which you will notice when cornering hard, but overall, Alfa Romeo has done a superb job at making the Stelvio feel almost like a performance saloon.
The Jag feels a little more sedate. While the V8 still makes a glorious sound, it's not as conspicuous as the howling V6 of its Italian rival. The whole driving experience is somewhat calmer, less frantic, but put the power on mid-corner and the four-wheel drive SUV suddenly becomes a tail-happy lunatic. It can be manhandled and steered with the throttle. Unlike anything else in this class, its near 2-ton weight, however, means it can also understeer if you're not paying attention. It's not a car you can just get in and drive fast, you need to learn it. Unlike the Alpha, you need to be softer with your inputs. Too much lock, it will chew you up and spit you out of a corner in an instant. It's by far the closest thing to a driver's car in this class and a real achievement for Jaguar. It's a hooligan of a thing, but one that can settle down and be used easily every day. The boot is huge and there's loads of space throughout. On a long journey, it's immensely comfortable and a far more pleasant environment than the rather dark and gloomy Alfa Romeo's cabin. The engine is constantly rewarding, and the noise isn't as embarrassing as it is in the Range Rover Sport SVR, which uses the same motor. It looks classier too, and the materials used are on par with its sister car. This then is the new mid-size performance SUV to beat, and definitely well worth the wait.
Join us again next week on AutoMundial as we check out Japan's greatest supercar, the Nissan GTR.